good evening, morning, afternoon, however you're observing this video. I'm going to talk you through the MA1 subject studies assignment and key critical information that you need to be aware of when you are taking up the course. First thing to note is all of the information that I am going to talk you through is on the Moodle page for PGCE Citizenship 1920, so I'm going to use that as my primary resource to help you navigate the various parts that you need to look at. So you have been sent all of this information. This is just a quick refresher of the information, so do make sure that you look at it in due course. So if you navigate to Moodle and navigate to your course, I have a range of different courses. You'll have a range, and you go to PGCE Citizenship 1920, and then you see our lovely start page and our Twitter page, which obviously has a range of options on there for you. Here's a question I asked earlier in the week: would you donate money to the Big Ben project? Anyway, so if you navigate to this page, you'll see the PGCE Citizenship reading list here, which is also linked here. Now, these are core critical reading list requirements for the course, as you all know by now, but this is essential information when you're coming to writing your MA1 modules. Secondly, I highlight the MA Module 1 showcase information at the bottom of the front page, and I'm looking at this from your student perspective. So if you go down there, there is information about how to write the assignment, an example of an assignment, and the PowerPoint type information. Now, additionally to that, if we navigate back to the PGCE Citizenship front page and you go to Autumn, at the bottom of Autumn, there's information about academic misconduct, which you need to review and make sure that you're not plagiarizing in any shape or form, including collusion and other things. And there's also assignment guidance and practice and examples. I've put the assignment guidance and examples directly under the places where you need to upload your actual assignments, so as for you to have a kind of location for them. Your citizenship front cover sheet is here, and your self-assessment sheets are here. These are to declare that your work is authentic and it's your work, and so on. Now, the window for the assignment is yet up, and I will work on that tomorrow with Kay, our subject administrator, to ensure that that's resolved. So again, if you go into the assignment guidance and examples, there is an example 2A and B for MA2, but we're not going to look at that today because today we're focusing on Module 1. And so there is the assignment Module 1, MA1 assignment guidance and example for you. Again, plagiarism slides and a full word report guidance on how you address the assignment. So again, go to your PGCE Citizenship page. At the bottom of the front page, there is the MA1 showcase information. There's the reading list, obviously the guide, and any library information that you need. There is also the secondary PGCE handbook and information related to it. Now, the reason why you might want to go to the secondary PGCE handbook, I will make clear in a moment. So you go to secondary PGCE, including SDTF routes. There's the handbook. All of this information, which revolves around your debates in education, that kind of thing, is also exceptionally useful when you're writing about pedagogy, because there is a range of pedagogic research and literature here and examples that you can use. Now, if you are looking at PowerPoints, for example, let's say you're looking at equalities issues within MA1, do make sure that you're referencing the original sources of this material and not just what is in the PowerPoint. for example, that's a very good resource and comes from a book. So there is a range of information that you can go to there. In terms of, I keep on writing in feedback, look at the literature, look at the evidence. Where do you get the literature and the evidence from, apart from your mind? So let's say we go to the PGCE Citizenship 1920 again. You scroll down either to the reading list here or the reading list here, which is on every page. And you see the reading list there. You go on to it. All of this material can be used in your MA1 assignment. Now there's articles here, there's books, there's, oh, it's Graham. No, Graham. Anyway, there's books, there's articles, there's a range of information that relates to citizenship literature, citizenship pedagogy, citizenship practice. So use this. We've also talked about Lee Jerome's book with Marcus. Marcus will come in and deliver a session with you soon. We talked about Lee Jerome's book with Marcus. And that book, up until 2014 or so, has a complete, almost complete literature bibliography for citizenship. But that's only till 2014. So do take note of some of the things that are 2015 and beyond, which won't be in the literature list of Lee's book. Incidentally, if you're listening to this in a future year, because this is 2020 as I'm recording it, you may or may not have Marcus come in. I just thought I'd mention that because it's relevant to keep going with resources that you've used to top tip for the future. Anyway, so there's the citizenship resources, and if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's also resources and things related to assessment, behaviour for learning, differentiation. A lot of you, when I'm giving feedback to you in your plans, I keep on mentioning where's the evidence for differentiation, where's the evidence for assessment. Here are articles that you can use, so do keep apprised of that material. Then, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but if you go to reading lists, library home, you can direct yourself directly to the library websites and the Explore, and then of course you can look at various sources within there. As well as that, if you go here and then back to IOE, Curriculum, Pedagogy and Assessment, because we're in the CPA department, you then come to a whole range of reading lists for a whole range of subjects within CPA. So this can be a really good tool for you finding literature as opposed to just searching for it in Library Explore. So for example, Education, Identities and Citizenship, a module related to it. Here is the reading list for that module. So you can pull out some of the text there if we haven't already talked about it. For example, this one, which looks interesting, I might move that later. Equally, if you go back again, you might be thinking about professional practice. So if you go to this secondary professional practice, it gives you a whole range of literature related to professional practice. Let's have a look at another one. Of course, some of it is subject related, so it's related to history education or Holocaust education, but some of you, for example, might be looking at the Holocaust within your unit of work, testing, policy and practice, and so on. Digital technologies for maths, but you might incorporate some of the reading. So do have a look through these elements. Teaching controversial issues. Now, here you see a range of literature relating to the teaching of controversial issues, another thing that you can look at. And I'm constantly referring to Diane Hess. Here you can see some of Diane Hess's work. So again, think about that. Okay, so that's in terms of the reading list and where you get the content from for the reading list. Now I want to take you back to Moodle overall. I can't remember how to get there. Moodle overall. However you get there is up to you. And the MA1 showcase information. Guidance for critical showcase of your unit. So let's open that now. Imagine I've opened it because I've already pre-opened it. So here we are, guidance for your critical showcase. So we open that up. Now this is where I put the original guidance for you in terms of what you need to do. 4 to 6 lessons, 5,000 word report, short introduction, and so on, and how you detail it through. And I've answered the common questions here. What works well, what doesn't, what you need to think about. In particular, think about the word count rule that's recently changed from UCL. It is very, very punitive. So remember, anything that is supplementary content for your assignments, put it in your appendix. All your evidence of your lesson plans, your scheme of work, your resources, all of this kind of stuff in your appendix. Make sure you're labeling your appendix A1, A2, A3, A4, B1, B2, and so on, and put that in your contents page. If you go over 5,500 words, which is 10% of your word count, so it's plus minus 10%, you will lose a mark. So we know it's ABC. So if you get a C and you write 6,000 words, you fail. So be very, very cautious with that. It explains how you write the title, the contents, all of these aspects, your rationale, and all of the types of things that you can include, from how you plan the unit to pedagogy and assessment rationale to differentiation rationale, and so on. A couple of you use this guide in terms of making your plan, and that's fine, but make sure you're specifically writing about the content of what you're actually doing in your assignment. Don't start saying, I created a lesson plan. Yes, what was in the lesson plan? Why did you create that? Why was that relevant? And link that back to the literature, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But there's one guide for you. Again, let's just highlight where the guide is. It's in the showcase information, which is at the bottom of the front page of Moodle. So then you've used the planning template, which you've all submitted to me twice now. Here is further guidance of the assignment. Again, let's assume that I open that. I will go to where I have it. And here is the other document that myself and Jeremy wrote to help you through this assignment, and thinking about what you're doing, you're planning, you're teaching, you're critically reflecting on your learning sequence, 4 to 6 lessons, you're assessing, you're monitoring pupil progress, and in particular looking at 2 students. Remember, don't forget the other students in the class, because you did teach the whole class, but think about those 2 students. You're reflecting on that experience, and you're analysing, why did it happen, what happens next. Here are some questions that you can think about to guide your unit, but you can just have a critical evaluation of effective citizenship teaching. Remember, we're writing at master's level, and I'll come back to the grade criteria soon. It is in the programme guide, and it explains what you're to do. Now, it says you might include a reference to literature you have read in a kind of literature review, but you do have to write about the information you've read throughout your assignment. So don't just have one section for a literature review. It needs to be discursive throughout your assignment. Conclusions. This is an analysis part of your assignment. What happened? Why did it happen? What did you learn about your practice? What could you do next time? How could you develop that? What does that mean about your own subject knowledge? And so on. In this assignment, on the whole, we are thinking about you as developing practitioners. If everything in your unit of work and all your lesson plans is perfect, we're going to be a bit worried, because it means that you're not having that reflective conceptualization of teaching, learning and assessment, you're not developing and growing in your practice. You just think that there's a kind of one way and that's it. And trust me, if there was one way and that's it, I'd write a book and become a millionaire. So do make sure you're analysing the content. References and appendices. In this section, you're putting all of the materials, everything related to your lesson plans, all the resources, the PowerPoints, the pupil marked work, anything like, I don't know, maybe you've got flashcards, worksheets, photos of video resources, you're putting all of it. If you're using video online, you're linking it all, everything goes in the appendix. So you're thinking about a 5,000 word assignment that probably has 10,000 words of appendix because there's so much content that you're adding, the units of work, the scheme of work, all this stuff. So make sure that all of that is there. It explains about presentation, be aware of double line or 1.5 line spacing in Arial point 11, so I can read it, we can mark in between. Your academic style, you're not writing in a colloquial or a chatty style, but you are using I because you are thinking about what you've done, not a kind of generic element of what teachers do in general, so do be aware of that. I'm just going to reduce this a bit because I might miss it. Okay. Be anonymous and avoid interpreting through feelings your data. So your data will be how your students did, etc. Be critical to it. Don't be worried if you're realizing that your students didn't do as well as you expected, because that's good analysis. Referencing, remember the word count, etc. Late submission penalties are explained here. They are also explained in the secondary PGCE guide, so do look at it like that. Do not be late is basically the solution to this. And then it talks about what happens if you need to resubmit. Now look, several of you might think, oh well, I'll just do it, I'll get some feedback on resubmit. If your assignment fails at master's level, you'll be given one opportunity to resubmit. All resubmission grades are capped. So you'll just pass and you'll only have that one opportunity. Now, bear in mind, if you do want to take further study, do a master's in the future with these credits, then the credits will be capped at the level that you're given. So do your utmost best to get it done. Also, it's extremely stressful. You get the feedback back and you need to resubmit. There's a significant amount of work to do. When are you going to do it? You still have your second placement, you still have the next assignment, and we already know the pressure of all of it. So work on your best to achieve it now. So that's the kind of overall guide that we gave. The PowerPoint discusses methods of doing the assignments and how you focus on pedagogy and how you write about the different things. It gives you a kind of layout and helps you think about how to write it using the literature, etc. Giving some options of how you would reference, but also how you'd relate back to the pedagogy. All of this is very good, clearly, because Jeremy wrote it. So there you go. So do make sure you have a look at all of these elements as well. Remember, I gave you initial feedback from your initial assignment plans. Have a look at that as well. And I've again basically highlighted what I've talked about in terms of this video presentation and indicated elements to do with that. This, remember, read widely is key. And then let's go to the program guide. So the program guide indicates, again, if we go back to Moodle, go back to the welcome, and the program guide is here. So you open the program guide, and in the program guide, if you scroll down to page 15, you can actually just do this, by the way. 15, it gives you an overall summary of the credits, the level of the assignment, and what you're doing. Remember, we're doing subject studies MA1 at the moment. What you need to do, pass, fail, requirements, etc. Now, if you then go to page 17, it again talks about what it is that we're doing in the MA1 module. Remember, the cover sheets and the self-assessment sheets, which are above the places to submit the work, those are to declare that you that is your work, basically. Again, it talks about the justification of the pedagogic focus, including your citizenship education. It talks about the specific things that you need to focus on. Note, you can choose from the following pedagogic foci, right? So think about that. And remember, you're referencing literature relating to these things. Now, it might be general pedagogic literature, if you're thinking about group work. It might be citizenship-focused literature. For example, the deliberative classroom project from ACT and linking to oracy and debate. Or perhaps it's active citizenship, and you're going to look at the RAPS toolkits and how Jeremy Kelsey-Fry has suggested things, or perhaps there's controversial issues and you're going to look at Diana Hess or Jeremy Hayward or these kind of people. Perhaps you're going to look at human rights education, and if you talk about human rights education, then you're looking at Osler and Starkey and so on. So, again, it demonstrates what you need to do in the program guide and how you need to lay it out, etc. And it also gives the assessment-specific criteria. So what we're looking for in your work, basically when you're doing the marking of your own students, you need to know the answers to assess what they've done. And this is what we are assessing from you. So as you're writing, make sure you've done all of these 15 points. If you're missing something, you're not covering the range and breadth of what you need to do in your assignment, the deadlines, etc. Now, if we then go to, well, here's the pupil monitoring form. And if we then scroll ahead past MA2, here is the master's level assignment criteria. So how we are assessing you based on the grade A, B, C category. And again, read this and think about your knowledge, understanding, application, independence, evaluation, critical reflection. Are you doing these things, and how are you doing them? Now, in regards to this, you can see very clearly a C grade piece of work, and indeed how, again, if we go back to here, how this is addressed in the example from MA1. Here we go, here's the example. And look, here we immediately notice there's a large assignment. It's 5,000 words written assignment essay, but it's 130 pages because of the amount of appendices within it. Ignore these dates. This has changed due to feedback from student groups, etc. Imagine they all had all the assignments in one go. That was very stressful, so that's changed. But this assignment gives you an understanding of what you're submitting. The declaration, the cover sheets, etc., the table of contents, and so on. And if you look, this is very clever because you can just click it and it goes directly to it. So that's how you are developing your own assignments. And now we notice, so this is at grade C, this assignment example, and obviously I would expect that you're all trying to aim for B and A. So do think about how this was developed and what you could do further. So good start, fine, etc., indicating a nice picture about democracy, etc. Then this person starts to write about the purpose of the actual unit of work, the purpose of doing this assignment. And remember, the purpose relates back to Jerome and Bugava's work on medium-term planning. So that can be cited here. This person has put et al. Don't use et al. Write the whole reference list because it is valuable to evidence all the authors. This person relates back to the same sources over and over and over again. Here, use different pieces of evidence to cite different arguments that you're using in different quotes. Avoid over-reliance on the same books over and over again. I've shown you a vast quantity of reading lists that you can use, so do look at that. And then they start explaining the rationale for why they've taught the unit they've taught in the way that it has been taught. Again, citing evidence. Now, they often cite quotes here, but you can paraphrase and cite in that way. Quote, quote, and so on. We'll pause at the moment. They've put the models of pedagogy and why they've done certain things in certain ways here, and then they've cited Bloom. Remember that when you're citing the original source and not some obscure website that you found the source indicated in. And if you note here, there's a limited lack of evidence. So Vygotsky is not cited. Why not? They should be citing Vygotsky here. Brunner is cited with a quote, but you can also paraphrase cite. Where did that information come from? Where was that information attributed to? Often I talk about in your plans that you need to have evidence linked to the subject knowledge base that you developed for your unit of work and your lessons. So for example, if you talked about Parliament in lesson 1, what sources of information did you use to teach your students about Parliament in lesson 1? You didn't learn about Parliament through osmosis, so where did you get the information from? So make sure that you're citing those sources. Make sure you're also citing sources about where you developed the resources from. If you went to the Parliament Education website and you downloaded a resource pack and you adapted that, make sure you are citing the Parliament Education website. And then in your analysis of why you did these things in the way that you did, you're clearly saying, for example, the unit of work that we were teaching, I would be writing this, the unit of work that we would be teaching is related to Parliament and democracy. Fortunately, we went on a citizenship social studies trip to Parliament, and I came across the Parliament Education website. I used this to upskill my subject knowledge because it was an area I wasn't familiar with, and so on. You're specifically saying why you did the things you did. Then you're saying, I used this video as an introductory starter to Parliament information and created a word bank sentence starter activity to check the knowledge of the video. In the video, there are key terms that I have used. You have to cite the video and where you got it from, and then you created those resources, the word bank, starter, whatever, and then you say see appendix 1 and you put that in your appendix, and maybe even you have a picture. So in this person's assignment they have pictures of the appendix materials to help them explain what they're talking about, and remember to label those pictures, figure 1, figure 2. The pictures don't count in the word count, but the labels do, so be aware of that. And footnotes, etc. are used when adding commentary about where to see the appendix information, etc. And as you can see, they put pictures and other things to explain it. And all the way through, they're explaining why they did what they did, what the purpose was, what they're going to do next. And the more critical analysis that you provide in terms of that, the clearer and more thorough your assignment. So if you see here, each lesson has specific targets that will need the students to answer the big question. Note this, there's an inconsistency with that. Use quotation marks for quotes, and if you are referencing your own work, just use one. Lesson 1, the focus was on democracy in the UK, and the primary learning objective was to examine the UK as a democratic country. This lesson, blah, 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 on why they did what they do. After this came the general teaching activity. Now, to improve this assignment, if they had written, I realized in delivery of this that there was a problem with the student's subject knowledge. I had pitched it at a higher level. It was a year 8 class, and I pitched it a year 9 class. And so within my teaching, I reflected in action. And in action is a SHON technique. And then you cite SHON of why you've reflected in action. And then you carry on analysing and discussing. That's what you need to do in your assignment, and that's how you explain it. So this is really the bread and butter of everything that you're doing in your teaching practice and your placement. Why did you pick these resources? How did it develop? And so on. And then when we look at the appendix material, they've content paged the appendix material throughout, and although you can't click it, it's quite clear the page number and the appendix number here, and then you can see the supplementary material. Now here they've put a strong scheme of work, a strong unit of work, 4 to 6 lessons. This is what I am expecting to see for your unit of work, so be aware of that. Lesson plans. Here is a lesson plan that this person has put, and here gives a good example of how a lesson plan should be. Now, if this assessment and differentiation element was further developed, that would improve the usefulness of the lesson planning. So you'd be going from a C grade up to a B or A grade, so do consider those elements as well. The resources are used here and explained here, including the worksheets and so on. So every single thing that you use in your assignment is put here. Look, here's marking. Now notice the marking here, nice list, 9 qualities, 9 out of 10. Tick, 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 tick. Think about formative assessment for learning techniques that develop and scaffold learning. Nice list, 9 qualities. Have you thought about blah, 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 whatever the other quality is, okay? So continually stretching your students forward. Lesson evaluations, quite detailed and in-depth. This is what you're referring back to in your actual content. What worked, why did it work, what are you going to do now, and so on. And so that kind of gives you an idea of the assignment overall. So do make sure you are looking at this. Tracking information of how students have performed and how they're doing in their assignments, very valuable, and so on. So that's that. Now what I was also going to say was in regards to how you are referencing. Now for referencing based help, please go and see the library staff, book an appointment to see the library staff. Go and see John Iona, who is our subject librarian, and he can help you with certain subject specific information and finding information. Now of course most of you won't have the time on placement, but when you come back for your directed study days in February and your uni days, then there will be time for you to do that. So what I would recommend is book it before you come back, because there'll be a huge race to see him, all of you together when you're here. Go to the library, borrow books. Also think about the resources that you can use. Yes, on Moodle, yes, in the reading list that we just talked about, but also in terms of Google Scholar. So if we go here, more from Google, we scroll all the way to the bottom, you see all of the Google empire, and here is Google Scholar. Search Scholar, you can search for articles, Citizenship Education and so on, and then it comes up with articles and gives you options, etc., about how to do it. Explore is obviously the best because it is UCL's system, and the Institute of Education has the largest education library in the UK, so do use these platforms. Of course, you can use other places and go to the British Library and so on, but in the very first instance, use these platforms. The other thing I was going to talk about was how you're actually writing. So let's say I'm writing for this assignment. So I say something like, and this is ad hoc while we're sitting here. I decided to teach a unit about politics, in particular for Year 8, to understand and be able to explain systems of voting. Now, if you were to put a page number, put the actual number like this. Now, I don't know that this is the page number, I've just made this up, but just to give you an indication of how to do it. And then say things like, let's say later on, because obviously I haven't finished that, on conclusion of lesson 1, so here what I'm doing is I've started to analyse what has happened in my lessons. Let's say you are analysing why students had behaved in a certain way based on an oracy point of view, and you were using deliberative classroom resources. Right, so you're using these resources. So then with these resources, you would relate back to them directly. So teacher briefing, additional resources, how you've done it in the way that you've done it, and so on. And you would then cite this itself, as opposed to some of the things it cites. You're citing this. Of course, this does give a good place for you to find other citations and other things to look at, so be thinking in that way. But if you were using this resource, you're citing this. So do have a look at the range of resources that are out there. Now remember, if you're quoting, the quotes, let me just get the resource that I was just using. Let's say I was quoting this spectrum match in the curriculum. In many textbooks, there's a table. We see examples of how citizens, if you took that exactly in that way, that is a quote. Okay, and then you reference that. In this case, the reference would be remember who that is? Interesting. Anyway, didn't know who was that. Who was there? That, in this case, that reference would be see. Now, if you were taking this resource and you were paraphrasing something, so you would say something like, when we talk about democracy, we often emphasize these elements, but there are a range of elements. So then you would say this. So I haven't quoted anything, but I've taken the idea from that, and so then you would cite that you got the idea from that, and so on. So don't just quote. Make sure you're actually using a range of different resources, but we haven't done that here. But make sure you're using a different range of paraphrasing and evidencing where your ideas have come from. They haven't just come from your head. You developed them somewhere, so make sure you're doing that. Okay, I hope that helps to address how to write the assignment. Remember, you need to include differentiation, assessment, active learning, debate, discussion. your learning themes, why you're teaching the unit that you are in the way that you are, pedagogy from generic secondary pedagogy themes, citizenship pedagogy, questioning, stretch challenge, and all of those wider issues. Remember the reading lists on Moodle, point, evidence, explain, link constantly, Google Scholar, library, explore the assignment criteria in the program guide, remember the word count, remember not to plagiarize, make sure not to take other people's work, make sure that you're not getting anyone to help you in this way, but do get them to read through your works, a family friend, someone off the course, a family relative, in fact, someone off the course, and often read out loud these things so you make sure it makes sense. Use Harvard referencing and strong bibliography. For this kind of work, I'd be expecting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of bibliography lists, and make sure that your bibliography is consistent throughout. I'm just going to go back to the bibliography element. I'll find it now. 1 second. Okay. Just make sure that in the bibliography it's a consistent standard and that you're consistently relating to materials consistently. So, for example, here, if you notice, their method is footnotes. This isn't a Harvard reference list, so don't use this as an example. And they don't have a bibliography, so do not do that. If you were going to do the assignment itself, you can get the assignment from here. I don't understand why I can't get it. Oh, here we go. Here we go, now I found it. When you're recording the screen, you can't actually see the desktop, so it's very disconcerting if you can't go back to the desktop. Anyway, okay. So when you look at this assignment in the bibliography section, it's not consistent. There's only 2 pages, well, 1.5 pages, and it's not consistent throughout. Some are indented, some aren't. Some are websites, some aren't. Some say when they're accessed, some aren't. Some have page numbers, some don't. Make sure your bibliography is consistent. If you are using a system of referencing, don't just rely on the system on Word. Do check that it actually works and it's actually doing itself. It is actually doing it itself. As that can often go wrong. My thoughts about it is personally I do it myself because then you know that it's consistent, but obviously that takes a lot of time, so be aware of that. As you know, I also sent you the brief notes of what I've said in my Skype webinar and also in this video about assignment 1, so there's another example about how to write, etc. Okay, that's it. A bit longer than I anticipated, but I hope that's helpful for you for MA1. Do let me know if you have questions or comments. Thanks. Bye-bye.